live for that. Live for the Spirit. Let the Spirit guide you. In all things, not just in preaching a message, but in every aspect of our lives. Be led by the Spirit, not by men, not by culture, not by Twitter, not by Facebook, not by Amazon or eBay or any of these other things, not by the media that presents commercials and TV shows, and not by those things. No. Be led by the Spirit. And if we're honest with ourselves, even the strongest Christian in this room is probably influenced by culture. I am. Paul says no. Be led by the Spirit. Still in chapter 5, verses 24 through 26, Paul writes these words. He says, those who belong to Christ have nailed the passions and desires of their sinful nature to his cross and crucified them there. Their passions and desires, this need to be appreciated, to be respected, to be accepted by men. We have nailed that to the cross. We don't need to be accepted by men because we live for Christ. As Paul said, if I desired for people to like me, I wouldn't follow Jesus. And then he goes on here and he says, since we are living by the Spirit, let us follow the Spirit's leading in every part of our lives. Let us not become conceited. Again, worried about what people think, or provoke one another, or be jealous of one another. I wish I could be as cool as Steve. I really do. I wish I could be as cool as Steve. I wish I could be as bald as Sean. I do. I wish. Love you. Pastor Bob just said, I like that. Buddy. Okay, you know what? That's funny because when we came in here, and he told me, don't you share this, but I'm going to anyway. We were standing right out here. He said, one time when I was at the other church, they did a video. And when they did the video, he said they had to put makeup on my head. Thank you for allowing me to be your preacher up until today. Returning to Hillcrest, I think. Oh, goodness. Paul tells us it doesn't matter what men think. It doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter. Paul says that it doesn't matter what men think of us because we oughtn't to be concerned with their perceptions of us. He tells us instead to concern ourselves only with what Christ thinks of us, that Jesus approves of us. Going all the way back to Galatians chapter 5, verse 1. Paul tells us that Christ has truly set us free. Stay free. Don't get caught tied up again in slavery. Stay free. Don't worry about what men think. And I think there's a balance there. If I'm fair, it's easy to stand up here and preach, but look, you and I are the same. I just get to stand on the stage, but we're all people. We face the same temptations and challenges, and Jesus did too, by the way. Fortunately, he was God and didn't fall to them like we do, but I understand that there is some part of us that, yes, I do need to worry about what people think to some degree. I can't leave church today and go out to the bar and drink 22 shots and pinch the ladies' butts and do that kind of thing, because no, I can't. That's not what represents a Christ follower. And so I understand that. I'm not telling you, hey, just be free. I think there's a dose of common sense with this. But Paul says, no, don't get caught up in reputation. Don't get caught up in stardom, spotlights, selfies. Finally, in chapter 5, verse 13, Paul just calls our attention to it one more time. He wants to make the point clear to these Galatians. He says, you've been called to live in freedom. You're free from what men think. It doesn't matter what your neighbor thinks. And you know what? For some of us, this is a bigger deal because some of us have really difficult pasts. I'm lucky, I don't. Thank you, Mom and Dad. I don't. Some of us have incredibly troubled lives. We have there are things in our lives that just make us feel so beat down and shameful and guilty and dirty. Paul says, no, you're free. Christ took care of that. You don't live in that bondage. Christ has set you free. Now will you allow yourself to be free? You are dearly loved. You are precious to God, so much so that He poured out His blood for us. And whatever your past, my prayer today is that you can be free from it. Whatever your present, I pray that you can be free from it. That you can just enjoy being a son or a daughter of God. You and I are free from the bondage of what men think of us. We live for the approval of Christ alone. Christ alone. Many of you know that the Bible teaches us that Jesus Christ is the cornerstone. Now, I've shared with you many times that I don't build things, I don't fix things, I don't baptize people, that sort of thing. One of the things I do know about building, and I've learned this through experience, people have told me, but I've certainly learned it through experience, and guys like Randy and Chuck and Pat, you guys can tell me if I'm wrong about this. When you start to build something, those first measurements, those first cuts, are imperative to the project. They're so important to the project because when you start this thing and you put the boards together, or as the Masons did when they used to build these buildings, that first stone they laid out, it had to be honed perfectly. It had to be at the exact right angle, because what starts off right here as just an inch mistake, well, I'm only off by an inch. By the time you get to the back of the church, it could be a couple of feet. And when you're building something like a pyramid, for example, you could be off by 10, 20, 30 feet with what started with just a couple of inches. And so that cornerstone has to be perfect. Fortunately for you and me, ours is. Jesus Christ is our cornerstone. He is the cornerstone of our lives. And what the Bible teaches us is that when we build our lives on the cornerstone, on Christ alone, we don't worry about what the rest of the people think. We worry about what Jesus thinks. We build on that cornerstone, that everything else in our life aligns itself. Everything comes out square and straight. We build on the cornerstone. And we do that by starting every single day. Every single day, we go to Christ alone. Lord, I don't care what the world will say about me. I don't care what anybody... God, I just want to serve you. I want you to be pleased. I want you to use me. And we start each day on the cornerstone. And when we do that, everything lines up straight. So, if you're here today, and you look at your life and you say, my life is kind of crooked. My life is wiggly. There are things in my life that I want them to align. I want them to be straightened out. I want them to be like Christ. Then do two things. Forget what men say. Go to Christ alone and build your life on Christ, who is the cornerstone. If you believe that today, if you will commit to that today, no matter what your past, if that resonates with you today, would you stand and sing Christ alone?